Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I am out here on beautiful Lake Amador. I will be fishing an evening bite and I have the kayak out with me. Today, however, I will be pedaling the kayak out into a creek to fish for channel catfish. This time of year, channel catfish will relate closely to bait, and what other area on a lake is better than a creek? I am not a fan of the evening to night bite. However, what I'm going to do is once I park the kayak, I am going to test the mouth of the creek first to see whether or not there are some channel catfish roaming here. There are bait fish here because I have seen a cormorant chasing the threadfin shad around. So therefore, I think this is a pretty good area to start prior to moving deeper into the creek if I were to get bit. While rigging up the second rod, the rod on the right hand side that I just put out wasn't even in the water for less than a minute and I ended up getting bit. This reservoir doesn't really have numbers of really big catfish, unlike many of the other motherlode lakes. What this reservoir does have though is great numbers of fish that are anywhere between half a pound to about 7 pounds, which makes for really quick action, especially during the early part of summer all the way into fall. However, one of the biggest difference today is I'm not fishing the morning to noon bites. I know a lot of my longtime subscribers and viewers will know that I am not a big fan of a night catfish bite or the evening catfish bite. As I've explained in many of my catfish fishing videos in the past, location is key when fishing during the daytime versus the nighttime. Areas that would be productive at night will not often be productive during the day, and it will be vice versa. This channel catfish is pretty nice, probably about 3 pounds, and this will be the typical size channel catfish a lot of folks around my area would keep. This catfish bore the telltale sign that he was rummaging around the bottom of this creek. I'll show him to you guys real quick before letting him go. I am not retaining any fish today, so off you go, buddy. The rig I'm using today is a basic fish finder rig. I have a 3/0 circle hook for ease of catch and release, and I have a piece of shrimp. As for the rod and reel, I am fishing my Luke Nichols catfish and carp rod made by Whisker Seeker. I am using casting gear because the creeks that feed into Lake Amador can be rather snaggy with lots of strong boulders and lots of dead timber. The reason I parked the kayak and I'm not fishing from on top of the kayak is because today was rather windy. The catfish in this particular creek weren't suspended, they were hugging closely to the bottom, so therefore the need to suspend bait above them wasn't necessary. So therefore all I did was just park the kayak and pulled out the rod holders, and I will be fishing from the bank. In my opinion, I actually find that by doing this, I can actually get more bites around the evening than I do if I were to be suspended. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting bit. I knew right away that I got myself another channel catfish. With the circle hooks, once the rod loads up, I will pick it up and just reel in quick. This will allow the circle hook to grab the catfish in the corner of the mouth every time. Now as for why am I not suspended on the kayak and just drifting through the creek, the reason is because as evening approaches, I find that a lot of channel catfish, or even bullhead species in particular, will move a lot much more, and it is just not as effective to suspend bait above them. The areas I like to suspend bait above catfish in general will often happen in very deep holes on the main body of the lake. The reason for that is because during the daytime, as there are water recreational users out on the lake, a lot of catfish will often leave these creeks to the mouth of the main lake or sit on points above out on the main lake. So therefore, that is when suspending a bait is rather useful. However, as I've mentioned already, the evening bites can be completely different from a daytime bite. This wasn't exactly a really big channel catfish, but they are here now after catching this fish. He was probably about a pound, but very pretty nonetheless. Alright buddy, off you go. As the sun slowly starts to dip below the horizon, catfish in particular will begin to move a whole lot much more than they would do during the daytime. This, however, will often vary from reservoir to reservoir depending on boating pressure. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting bit again, and I knew right away that I got myself another nice channel catfish. Another reason why I don't like the evening bite is because it can often be hours before the last water recreational user get off the water, and this will often depend on the reservoir, because as the last water recreational user get off the water and things settle in, that is more times than not when the catfish will start feeding. This shallow creek is a great example of why it is a great evening spot for channel catfish. The reason it is a great evening spot is because during the daytime, there will be water recreational users parked outside of the mouth of this creek swimming. A lot of catfish will not be caught here during the middle of the daytime, and an angler will have to fish the main body of the lake. However, as evening approaches and the water recreational folks leave, these channel catfish will move into this shallow creek to feed. This was a very nice channel catfish, probably about 4 pounds, and I'll show him to you guys real quick, but ultimately he decided to bolt off. So hopefully that explains my take again, why I don't like the evening bite. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting bit again, and I knew right away that many of the channel catfish were moving in quick as the sun is dropping quickly. This isn't a big channel catfish, and probably another small size juvenile, but I'll take what I can get because I'm going to fish till about an hour before the sun sets completely. A lot of my subscribers and viewers alike have often addressed me that they can't fish during the daytime or the early morning period and can only fish during the evening. I'll show this fish to you guys real quick and I'll let him go. Now back to the topic of when an angler can fish. By all means, if an angler can't fish during the early morning or daylight hours, evening fishing is great. But I'm not a big fan of the evening bite. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting a very violent bite, and I got myself another very nice channel catfish. Again, as I mentioned already, especially fishing during the daylight hours and the evening hours, the areas an angler should target will be completely different. My preference whenever targeting the evening to the nighttime bite will be shallow water. As the sunlight drops and the water recreational users get off the water, catfish will frequent shallow water, and this is where an angler should focus most of their effort on. Not all shallow water will be created equal though. An angler should target shallow water where there are bait present, whether it be threadfin shad or even panfish species or juvenile bass. Catfish will frequent these areas. One great area that an angler can easily find where permissible to fish would be near boat launch or docks. I'll show this catfish to you guys real quick, and it is a very healthy channel catfish. This will be the typical size I would harvest if I were to be taking fish home. Alright dude, I'll let you rest up and you can go off now. The sun was dropping quickly, and I'm not going to fish until it's completely dark, so I'm going to try and get this bite on the right hand rod before calling it quits and pedaling back to the launch ramp for the day. The bites were coming in hot and quick, but I am not rigged to fish at night, so therefore I will get this catfish and I will call it quits. If I were night fishing, I would continue to get bites throughout the whole entire night. However, I am not a big fan of night fishing. As a content creator, I think night fishing, or a lot of other content creators who do night fishing, often produce some of the worst content because more times than not, an angler can't see anything, or neither can they see what's happening. I think it just makes for poor content in my opinion, so therefore I'm not a fan of night fishing. However, if an angler don't have any other choice and the evening and the nighttime bites are their only option, then hopefully this episode helped those guys figure out a spot or pattern. The biggest takeaway I want many anglers to get from this episode is fish whenever you can. If you can fish in the mornings to afternoon, by all means do so. If you can't do that, then the evening to nighttime bite is fine. The only way an angler is going to catch a catfish is simply putting the time in and being out on the water. No angler has ever caught a catfish complaining and fishing from the couch. That is all I can say, and I'm going to leave it at that. This was another very nice channel catfish, but because I have a pretty long pedal back to the ramp, I am going to call it quits after this catfish. So hopefully today's episode helped those guys out there that are wondering how to fish the evening bite or even into the darkness. Location is key. Some areas will be more productive during daylight hours and will be dead at night, and some areas at night will be dead during the daylight hours. Alright buddy, you are lucky I am not keeping you, so off you go. Overall, it was just a great little short evening out here on Lake Amador. I caught a handful of channel catfish for the camera despite having only a few hours to fish. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, tight lines y'all.